Hello and welcome to the Animation Communication Podcast, for your source of discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join our host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lyle Convoy, or Lyle Manbad. This episode contains some mild adult language.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's / month / whatever episode it is of Animation Communication, where we talk about all the things, art, animation, cartoons, just the media as a whole. So we have kind of a little bit different thing going on today. We're interviewing crew members from The Rec, which is a basically a narrative type game, kind of like a point and click adventure, a little bit thing, where you pick different options as a character and you move through a narrative, and it's kind of like Edith Finch, which we've talked about before on the main channel, which, you know, it's basically a big narrative that you explore. And, you know, that storytelling structure is really interesting to me. So I think, Florent, you reached out when the game was in development, and you were like, hey, do you want to play the game? And I'm like, sure. I like games that are cool. So I guess, I guess we can start there. So, like, for the media stuff, did you kind of just reach out to people that were in the sphere of Edith Finch that found it interesting, or how did you kind of choose who you contacted as far as that?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. I've been looking on YouTube or Twitch or other platforms, streaming platforms, basically, for people who were interested in that kind of game that we knew we were working on, because there are not that many content producers that are into those kinds of games, but those who are, usually they really like them, and their communities like them too. So I thought, yeah, I might as well send a couple emails, see how people react, and some people like you reacted really well, so I was really pleased with that. We do a lot of interviews and reaching out for this specifically, so it's always a range of people that are like, oh, cool, I'll do that, and then, you know, a lot of ghosting, so it's always kind of a little bit of a gamble. But do you guys want to introduce yourself? I know you already talked, but introduce yourself, introduce like the studio, kind of give a basic background for the game, and you know, how you guys were involved and kind of the basics. So however you want to break it down. Coralie, do you want to start, Coralie?
You don't prefer to start?
Well, okay. Let's introduce generally. The studio is called The Pixel Hunt. It's been created by me a few years ago now, in 2013. I'm a former journalist, so when I created this video game studio, I decided to go with games that I call reality-inspired games. So all the games that we do, they always have some kind of relationship to reality that most games don't. So no dragons, no fireballs, no princesses to save, but stories that are more about the real world and how you can have things happen in life and how you're supposed to face them. And The Rec is a good example of that, because the main character is going through the absolute worst day of her life. And she has to face it, and you as a player, you have to try to help her face it. So in The Pixel Hunt, I kind of I'm the person who's producing, so taking care of the planning, the budgets, the stuff, boring stuff like that. And also I'm a writer, but for this game I had help from another writer who's also here today.
Yeah, so I'm Coralie, and I'm Florent's sister. And I think it's very important for this game because I think our work together started more as a discussion around the game and around what Florent wanted to do, and especially because his character was a woman, and we were talking a lot of like women's experience of the world, you know, today, and I was often the time shouting at him as I subtly am able to tell him things, like as brother and sister. But also we talked a lot also of our common experience of life, because this game is digging deep in real experience of life, which is romanticized or like fantasized in the game. We had a lot of discussions about that, and one day he asked me if I wanted to write the game with him, and what started as discussions about the game ended in like a collaboration. And for me, I'm usually, like right now I am a filmmaker, but I make documentary films in a research center.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I have no idea what the creative industry in France is like. So I'm sure we can kind of get into that a little bit, but as we go.
So you say that the game is based on like sort of real life. Is it inspired by events in your lives, or maybe the events that you've heard from friends, or maybe stories you've read online or the like?
It's a little bit of all that, basically. Luckily enough, so I'm going to spoil the game. So I'm sorry for the people who listen and didn't play yet. Maybe you should like just stop listening for 5 minutes. But the main thing that happened to the main character Junon is that she lost her daughter, and that's the big narrative knot in the middle of the story, basically. And luckily for me, I have 2 daughters, but they are still alive and they are still very well. So this part is the part that people ask about the most. Like, is that real? And it's not. But what is real, though, is that when I became a father, this was suddenly the most important question in my life. Like, from one day to the next, I became a father, and I became cursed with the possibility of this loss. And that was something that was really intense. As a father, I had to cope with that and to grow with living with this idea that this possibility could be a reality one day. And so, of course, this is the big reason why we decided to go with that topic specifically in the story. But apart from that, there are lots of tiny little moments in the game that are directly inspired from our life experiences, mine and Coralie's. And what she said about the fact that basically for a man to write a female main character is complicated. I think that Coralie, when you chimed in and asked to change things and like tweak things because he was just wrong, I think probably you also used some of your personal experience and to inject that into the game. I don't know to which extent, though.
I think I was thinking about your question, Tai, and I think there is something like, when you live things in your real life, you got like those strong impressions that stay in yourself like for days and months and all of your life. And those feelings are something that you don't have to rewrite as they are, but you have to find them back in the stories you write. Meaning that the things that the character are going through in the game, they are fiction, but the way they approach the things they are living, it can remind us of things we lived in our lives and how we felt when we lived them in our life. I don't know if I make much sense in English. In French, it totally makes sense. But if it's not clear, you can ask me and I can clarify. And also, we also, to be just precise, Florent and I, we experienced very young, or to me I was very young, the mourning of a person in our family very close to our heart. And that was something that we live in different ways and we experienced in different ways, but that as soon as you come to a game where there is the question of loss, of course, you talk about loss, you talk about how you dealt with loss and how potentially the character would deal with loss if they have certain type of character that looks like you, etc., etc.
So you mentioned that the story is mostly centered around a woman who's losing her daughter, but I recall reading in the description of the game that I believe the protagonist, I think it was like Junon or something.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it mentioning that her mother was diagnosed with something or something along those lines.
Yeah, because why stop there? When you go down the depressing route, you wanna go all the way.
Oh, okay. So
kill everyone. It's fine.
kill them all.
Yes. No, but actually the idea there was to talk about dysfunctional families and how your relationship with your family can affect you in a whole array of ways. And so there's a specific relationship between Junon and her mother. They have a complicated relationship. Her mother is called Marie, and Marie is a very well-known artist, and she's got a big ego. And she went through a lot when she was younger, and that built her in a specific way. And so she had a relationship with her two daughters, so Junon and her sister Diane, which was toxic in a way, but also which was the only way she was able to be as a mother. So the whole idea of the game is that you will learn later in the game that the big drama in Junon's life is that she has lost her daughter, but you will by then have grown familiar with the idea that lots of things in the relationship Junon has with her mother, with her sister, with her ex-husband, lots of things don't work as well as they could. And the whole game will be about trying to understand what is wrong, why it went wrong, and how possibly she could be able to face it and fix it. And so that's the whole idea, and that's why you need that many negative events in her life so that you can, as a player, try to face them and to fix them, basically.
Okay, so that brings me to another question I have. I remember it mentioning her reliving some events or something like that, and I was wondering, is this like a time travel thing, or is this more like she's going back in time in her mind and like going through the events and sort of figuring out like what she can learn from those things to build upon the present so she can reach a better future?
So I have my opinion on that, but Coralie, I would be curious to hear what you think about it, because I kind of dumped the idea on you without explaining too much. So what's your interpretation of what happened?
I'm torn because I like the idea of reliving past lives to arrange them and changing your life. But I really enjoy the fact that it's more of introspective game. So maybe to me the car crash is kind of metaphorical, or maybe this little voice you have in your head before you do something that tells you that if you do it that way, you will end up bad. Or maybe if you do it that way, maybe it will help to reach the resolution. So I would guess it's more about the introspection stuff.
So it's not like time travel, or it's just sort of introspection then?
To me it is. It is, but I'm not the creator of the game, so...
Yeah, so it's sort of open to interpretation then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and actually, even I'm not sure exactly what happens in this game.
That's how you know it's good.
There's clearly a dimension that looks like a time travel, or a little bit inspired by... so in French is Le Jour de la Marmotte, the Groundhog Day. You know this very famous movie where
yes.
You get this guy who's living the same day over and over again. So there's a little bit of that in the structure of the game. You face a situation that you can't deal with. You lose it. you take your car, you get in an accident, and in this accident you see flashbacks from memories from your past, and those memories they allow you to actually go back in time and face the same situation but with new ideas and with new ways to look at that situation and to be able to just disarm the situation and find a way to not get confrontational or to not run away, but to just face it and fix it, basically. So there's this logic of not exactly time traveling, but living through the same day again and again and again. But I must admit that I kind of agree with Coralie's take on it. I think that it's if I had to decide what's actually happening, I would probably go with the metaphorical things that happen in your mind when you have this hint that if you listen to the voice that says fuck it, just like throw everything away, then things are going to go bad, and so you're able to just like swerve in the right direction so that you're able to actually react as an adult and face the situation and just get.
All right. So another thing I wanted to ask about is, where does the game take place? I remember on the, I believe it was the protagonist's shirt, she was wearing a shirt that says Il est mort le soleil or something like that, which I believe means he is dead, the sun, if I'm correct. But the game is in,
yes.
But the game is in English, so I was wondering where it's supposed to take place.
Wow.
That's deep. Well, I mean, if I can speak, I think it's just more of a translational thing where it's implied to be in a French hospital, but it's just translated to English for the sake of English players being able to play it. So,
all right, is that correct?
Yes, it is. It's funny because I didn't expect so many people to have this question, but it's been asked quite a lot up until now. And the thing is, so the whole cast in the game is French. The actresses and the only actor, they are all French, but they are acting in English just for the sake of being accessible to as many people as possible, because there are way more people who are able to at least understand English than there are people who are able to speak French. We like this idea that they would have a hint of a French accent.
Okay.
So they are like for the most part they are completely bilingual and fluent, but we ask them not to hide their French accent just because we thought it would be a nice touch. And lots of people told us, oh, you should have had them play in French and we could have read the subtitles. But also some other people told us that they wouldn't have been involved in the game if it were in French and they had to read all the subtitles. So, yeah, if we get rich one day, we'll just have them all get back in the studio and re-record a French version of the game. But as you may know, voiceover is very expensive, so we had to make a choice and we went for the English, even though the game is completely set in French.
Okay, that makes sense. I was actually going to ask about that because I remember the description of the game also said that it's dubbed in English, though I thought that was kind of strange because when I hear the word dub, I assume that it was originally recorded in something else.
I mean, like as a dirty American, I've turned subtitles on anyway, just because some of the accents kind of take a while to get used to. But I'd say like halfway through, I was kind of used to and was able to understand her. But like, at the beginning, I was just like, oof, that's a thick accent.
Yeah.
Oh, they have a way lighter accent than we do, so it must be challenging.
Well, that tells you like a lot about us being spoiled as far as just like. Even like regional dubs for like big conglomerates and stuff like that. So I'm just not used to it, or used to like if I'm going to Ty's point, if I'm going to watch something that's in a foreign language, I would dub it. But to also like that might just put people off too if they have to read subtitles the whole time. So
yeah, I honestly wouldn't mind playing it with subtitles in French. I have sort of this thing where I kind of like to play things in what they would canonically be saying, like when I watched JoJo, I watched the first couple parts in English and then the third and fourth part in Japanese, and I won't go into all the details on that, but in any case, yeah, I like the idea. I would really like the idea of the game being remade in French. And if you guys need someone who can do German, vielleicht konnte ich dabei helfen.
Yeah, Ty likes to experiment with languages, and sometimes he says things in German and French to me, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, you do you. So,
Je ne parle pas français.
Yes, you do.
Je parle seulement allemand.
Oh no. German is really hard. Yeah.
Das stimmt.
are you good with your questions, Ty, before I do post-game questions?
Yep, my other two ones have already been answered, so...
Okay,
we're
so
good.
just a refresher for now for people that are playing at home. Essentially, it follows Junin, again, I'm going to butcher these French names, who's in the hospital, dealing with her mother, who I think it was a stroke or something like that, or relatively elderly mother who, and she has to make a decision whether to take her off life support or not, and a lot of that, and that's kind of where the flashbacks or kind of the double questioning decisions in her life kind of come up, because like there's, something near the very end of the game that kind of forces the ultimate decision. And something I thought that was interesting is that you get to choose basically the ultimate decision, as well as you can get more information based on the dialogue if you want to click on more and get more context, or you can just kind of do a speed run too if you want to of the game. So I tried to click on everything, so I made sure I was all ready for this, but it was very interesting. And then Jun's sister comes in, and they have a different father, so like they have a different, like there's a lot of complex character relationships between all the characters, which I thought was really cool. So I guess this will be the spoiler part, besides the very thing at the beginning. So if you haven't played the game yet, it's on Steam, it's on PS5, I don't know what all the PSs. Yeah, I don't know what
even
version.
The PS2?
No, only PS4, PS5,
Okay.
Xbox One, Xbox Series, and Switch.
Yeah, and
Nintendo
I'm
Oh,
curious.
wow, it's on Switch?
Yeah,
Yes.
Nice.
It's a little bit less nice on the Switch because the Switch is not a very good hardware-wise, but it's still on the Switch. Yes.
But yeah, so well, maybe we'll get to the end about like the distribution and how all of that works, because I'm curious to see, because I've never done anything like this, so I'm just. But anyway, so spoiler alert now. If you want to play the game, how much is the game? Just for clarification, if they wanted to get it, do you guys know off the top of your head?
Oh, it's
Okay.
$20 basically.
Cool. So it's $20, and if you liked Edith Finch, but you want a little bit more choice in the narrative, then for sure it's kind of like that, and it's also very kind of like Finch in the same way where there's sequences where you don't really play as different characters. You still play as Junin throughout the whole narrative, but there's still segments where you kind of go back and re-examine something that's on the past. So that's kind of why it was like Finch, but. I guess starting out with that, I know I read the pitch packet and I saw you guys mention that. So did Finch play a role into how you developed the narrative, or was that just something as a point of comparison when you were telling people about the game and something to compare it to?
Well, there's not that many video games that explore those topics. So when you try to find influences or references so that people will have a vague notion of what to expect with the game you are making. In our case, there were not that many games that we could have compared ourselves to, even though we had a lot less money than what remain of Edith Finch had to produce their games. I don't remember the name of the studio.
Giant Sparrow.
Yes, Giant Sparrow, of course. They are more experienced and, probably more talented too. But so when we wanted to compare the game to other games, when you talked about Edith Finch, when you referenced Life is Strange, so there's a couple games that you can reference, but not that many, because it's kind of a weird game talking about death and grief and family relationships. Definitely there's not that many of like this one
For
out
sure.
And I would say that when we were talking with Coralie, we would probably reference way more often references from other media, such as movies or novels or even essays or plays, and we didn't talk a lot about video games. Actually, Coralie, I don't remember mentioning lots of video games.
Yeah, to be like video game, stuff isn't really my exact forte. But I know from just kind of
that's why I'm here.
I know just kind of like from observing that like kind of the video game narrative is kind of like a emerging thing, and I think like the popularity of Finch is definitely something that's kind of solidifying that. And even like comparison to their first game is called the Infinite Swan, and which wasn't as good in my opinion. But they're both very artsy. Like I'd say Swan is much more artsy because that's kind of the foundation of it. But like in your guys' game is artsy for like different ways. So, but anyway, I have questions. So what kind of like how did you guys? Because all 6 characters have like really interesting like complex character relationships with each other, and that's what I like. One of the things I really liked about it is it's not just like even Junan's relationship with her ex-husband Alex. There's not really like. You would think just like off the get-go that, that's kind of a toxic kind of, experience because like, oh, they're estranged or something like that. But like they actually have kind of a positive relationship, even though like in the death of Astrid is the thing that kind of drives them apart the most. So like what was your kind of brainstorming process to kind of not only develop the characters, but develop all of their interpersonal relationships with each other?
Do you remember, Coralie?
I remember that we wrote like a mini biography for each character, and we took a really long time to build up those characters like outside of the narration and outside even of the relation they have inside of the narration. So we build up like their relation since like childhood, or like for June and her husband, ex-husband, since like high school. But I guess some of it reappears in the narration. But as I remember, we worked a lot on those backstories and even the thought process of the characters, what they like, what they dislike, how they are in the day-to-day life. Or we just pushed it a lot in my memories.
Yes, and we had this little drawing. Because for each character we try to define the relationship with all the other characters of the story, even if that part would not appear in the story at all. For instance, we know what Astrid thinks of Diane, even though Astrid and Diane are never mentioned together in the story, or almost never, maybe like one sentence in the whole game. We know how Marie feels about Alex, for instance. We took a lot of time. You're right, Coralie, and we even had this little star-shaped drawing with all the characters interacting with each other, so that we were really sure that, because then it's way easier to write relationships between characters if it feels natural to you, because you know them as an ecosystem of characters that have interpersonal relationships in all different directions. And also it's really useful to develop one character to ask what they would think about all the other characters. For instance, Marie hates everyone.
Yeah, I got that vibe.
in her life. Yeah, but she actually likes that Alex fights back, because that's what we decided, that Alex was pretty protective of Junon, and when he saw that Marie was abusive, he would fight back, and he would tell things very bluntly to Marie. And Marie actually would like that and would enjoy Alex's company because he would be very blunt, and she would find it brave that at last someone would actually resist her. And that doesn't appear in the game, not really. But I think it's really cool to know more about Marie as a character. That we decided that she would actually like that Alex would be blunt with her and would tell her to quit showboating and quit being an ass with everybody, basically.
It kind of sounds like how people write mystery stories. Where they'll come up with how the murder or whatever took part, and then they'll fill in. They'll sort of build the narrative around people figuring out all the details.
But also, I think that this process of writing characters made us feel close to them. I mean, I remember some moment when you asked me to write like a piece, or it was easier to me to remember all the time, like what was their link, what would they think, who they deeply are, to be able to come up with ideas. I think it's a way of generating ideas, or also narration ideas, to have this kind of knowledge of those characters.
Yeah, and I think especially as far as consuming Western media, which is what I mostly do, and it's more flexible with anime, but it's usually the focus on one character going through a specific character arc, and then the other characters around them, are either self-realized or self-actualized, and or the focus is on them improving the protagonist, and the example that just comes off the top of my head is in Beauty and the Beast, because that's a common one. So the whole movie is about Beast's character arc, learning to love Belle, and Belle has a character arc, but as far as her her core, she's already mostly complete. So I think that's an advantage of the medium that you guys chose as far as to do this via game, is that you can have more complex interpersonal relationships, I think, than just more straightforward media, which I thought was very, very refreshing as someone who consumes a lot of media.
Yes, you can actually decide when you play whether you want to dig deep into Junon's every single thought, and if you do that, you will be very familiar with her, and you will be it will be very clear in your mind what she thinks about the other characters and how she what's her relationship to them. But you don't have to do that. You can be way more elusive in a moment because you want to play faster, because I don't know, you don't like the character she's talking to that much, and that's okay. And so I think that lots of people say, oh yes, but the games you are making, they are not real video games, because the story, you don't completely change the story through your choices, and you don't completely revolutionize what can happen. So it's very on rails, and so it's not a game. It could be a movie, and I disagree with that. I don't think it could be a movie. Actually, I wrote a novel version of the story, and it's completely different. It's a completely different writing process to write as a novel or to write it as a game. And so I'm completely I want to die on that hill. The rec as a game would not be the same as a movie or as a comic book or as any other media. And
from what I gathered, even in general, you have to streamline a lot of information just to fit the 3-act structure of a movie or something like that. And I think in my Edith Finch review, I said it probably, if they were going to adapt it in some way, it'd probably work best as a miniseries, so you can get different character perspectives as you go, and not just you're not just with Edith Jr. essentially the whole game, and it's just her narrative, because half the point is to see the story from other people's perspectives, But yeah, so I guess we'll go into the flashbacks a little bit, because I thought that was really interesting. So for people who haven't played the game yet but are still in the spoilers, just because you're a little risky, the flashbacks basically work as like one big tracking shot based on different views, and it's non-linear as far as like how it works. So sometimes you zoom out of a shot and then you kind of go around a room, and then sometimes you have access to like a little bit more of the big tracking. So like an example is the dollhouse flashback. So there's like a dollhouse on, being thrown out, and then you can kind of go in the dollhouse, and then you can kind of go in it a little bit more, and then there's a dollhouse in the dollhouse. So I thought all that stuff was like really interesting, because I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Like, and compared to Edith Finch, because it's a walking simulator, essentially you get to walk around the environment instead of being told like what direction you were going. So I was curious to see like what your favorite flashback was, like both from a framing composition standpoint, and then from a narrator's perspective for the two of you.
I think I have a soft spot for the bird, for the flashback with the bird, because that's the first one that Florent showed me. And that was the first time for me that I realized how the game would shape, because I was only in the part of the writing. And suddenly it made sense. Suddenly the game, all those writings that we will do together for some time, suddenly they would take place. So it's not linked to the story directly, but it's also linked to the fact that I really like the light and the feelings of these specific memories. I think it's particularly beautiful and well done. But it was also because I just discovered like the graphics, and I wouldn't expect that it would be that good. Like, wow! I'm so proud of Florent! Yeah.
I must specify that I had absolutely nothing to do with this. All the clever ideas, all the nice, like the composition and lights and everything, it's all due to Alexandre Grieta, who is the art director of the game. And even the concepts, like the very cool concept of having this dollhouse inside a dollhouse inside a dollhouse, it's completely on him, which has proven challenging sometimes, because, for instance, he absolutely wanted to have this memory inside a church, because he has this thing about churches and the very dramatic scenery that you can have in church. And it's actually Coralie who wrote this memory, and it was a struggle for her, because she didn't like that setting so much, and she had to write inside.
Okay, I didn't like this because in this scene there is a huge Jesus Christ in the middle of the room, and I was a bit, as a feminist, I was a bit annoyed. So I proposed something else, which was like ancient Roman fresco, with those beautiful landscape and stuff, and so that was the battle.
Well, that's interesting, because like there's kind of two churches, because the hospital was like a makeshift church that was converted, I think. So there's a lot of but it's interesting because I'm not really a religious person, but but I am Jewish, so having these overlapping religious themes and how the pros and cons of having religion in your life, I always like that kind of stuff, because I think people are sometimes blind to one way or the other, just based on like the way they grew up, and so and I don't think people question it as much as they should from my perspective. But again, that just based on personality plus like how ingrained it is into your you as growing up.
Your take is very, very interesting, because we grew up in a family where Catholicism was very important in the both way, because we had a more bourgeois family in one side and a more very popular family. I don't know if popular is the right word, but very people working in mines, in coal mines, working class family in the other side. Yeah, and both sides were very religious, and I think it was also my anti-clerical part that reaction, from those kind of type of education from both sides, that our parents helped us also to be a more critic or open-minded of other perspective on the world. And I think I reacted really strongly because of this Christ. But that was the point of the story. So finally, I gave up the fight. I said, okay, it makes sense, and that's important. So okay for the big Jesus Christ in the middle of the church.
But yeah, like in general, the interestingness of just, I know that's not a word, but the interestingness of even someone who's estranged from religion, it's still kind of important to them in some way because it's like a comfort, especially when they are growing up, even if it's not necessarily the most positive experience all the time. So they feel drawn to it because it's just my mother liked it, and I want to make sure I want to honor her by honoring her religion, even though it's not really for me. So, but you still kind of keep it, even though you don't. I don't know, religious stuff. So let's see. Let's see what's a. I was kind of curious about for the Astrid scene where June talks to her on the roof, and that conversation, there was a lot, I think there was an even achievement that says not a ghost or something like that. So I assumed it was just kind of her trying to kind of come to terms with the accident, and even though the very human, overanalyzing everything, even though it was an accident, there's nothing really to have done or could have done. And then you kind of find out near the end, there's a little bit. So I was curious, did you guys have a specific intention as far as what she was was it a delusion? Was it just kind of her kind of processing her grief? Was it how did you guys want it to be? Was it more interpretation as far as the viewer? Was there a specific kind of angle you were going for with that scene?
So first, I like to allow people to put anything they want in that scene, and it's a little bit like the car crash. I don't want to be too dogmatic on what it is and what it is supposed to be. And for me, it's actually a variety of things, and not only one. So yes, she's not a ghost because it's not a poltergeist story, but she can be a lot of things. And for me, it's mainly two things that I had in mind while thinking about that moment. The first one is, as Coralie mentioned, we lost our father when we were younger, and for a lot of years I didn't think about it too much, or didn't really want to actively think about it too much, and I built up a lot of tension that I did not even realize I felt. Emotional tension about the loss, about his absence, about a lot of things. And one day I went to bed, and I had, sometimes when you go to bed, you close your eyes and immediately there's a dream that starts. 5 seconds in, you are inside a very vivid dream. And I had this dream of him in our family home, his family home, so a home that we are not going to anymore because we kind of lost touch. It's not true because Coralie is going to go there soon, but anyway, he was in Sargé-sur-Bray. He was there, and I was like, but you are here. And in my dream, it felt weird that he would be here, but in my dream, he wasn't dead. So it wasn't a ghost. He was just weird that he was actually here. And in my dream, I took him in my arms, I hugged him, and then I laughed, and I woke up bursting in laugh. I woke up laughing out loud, and I really woke up in real life. from the good, the absolute awesomeness that was the ability to hug him in my dreams and be happy to see him again, that gave me so much joy that it made me laugh and it woke me up. And this incredible moment where I was able to recreate not only my father but also my emotional connection with him and the relief that he was here again, even though he was not. It was so intense and joyful, not sad at all. I even when I woke up and I realized that it was all a dream, I wasn't sad at all. I was just super happy and super glad that I was lucky enough to have experienced that. And so that's where this scene with Astrid comes from. The incredible, like, she needs relief at that point. Junon needs relief, and so the ability that she has to just be able to materialize her daughter and spend times with her, it's a relief for her, and it's joy, even though it's sad also, because at points they get separated because she's still resisting the possibility to acknowledge that it was just an accident and she's not guilty. And the other part of the other reason why I wanted this scene is the guilt. And for me, it was the best way to materialize the crushing guilt that has been weighing on Junon's shoulders for 5 years and accumulating for 5 years and crushing her. And the only way she has to be able to start living again is to get rid of the guilt. And by getting rid of the guilt, also to say goodbye to Astrid for real. And so that's the other idea that I had while writing that scene. But hopefully, players will project other things in that scene and interpret it completely differently. Maybe, Coralie, you interpreted it completely differently. And I hope that's the case, because it's just like, I don't want to impose... This scene is supposed to mean that on
The whole story sounded like it could have come from a movie, like the story about the dream.
Yeah. It felt really intense, and I never dreamed about him again. And sometimes I wish I would be able to experience that dream again.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I've never really had a recurring dream before, so pretty much every dream I have is different. So obviously, if I have a nice one, it's sad I can't have it again. But you know,
it's like that sometimes, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like, just kind of as a side note, since we were talking about that, like, I thought it was really cute that Astrid was named after the character from How to Train Your Dragon. I wasn't expecting that at all. And the other fun thing is, I guess in French, the translation for the main character is Harold, and I had to get used to that because in the OG version, his name is Hiccup. And so I guess there wasn't a word for that in French, or I'm not like, or an easier version of that. So I was just like, who is this Harold person?
No, it's just a translation mistake. Actually, the translator who translated the game in English didn't know about How to Train Your Dragon. So when he translated, he just kept the French name. As the French name is British, he actually thought that he was also the name in the US, which was not the case. But when we realized that, we already had recorded the voices, so we could not re-record the voices and
No, I mean, it's similar enough that, you know, you just kind of assume that's like the French translation. But I just thought that was like, and it was for me, it was like something humanizing as someone who like likes cartoons and consumes a lot of media, of like someone who's just very inspired by a character enough to name their child after them. But I'm also like probably in the minority of people that are just watching too many cartoons. So I want to touch on, I have a couple more, I promise we're almost done. So like, you know, speaking of the bird scene, I was just kind of like, because I know Diane is a very hard character to humanize, just because of her, you know, her ego and just like her difficulty. And, you know, I thought that was a good way to introduce, like, even though she is, the way she is, she's still kind of trying to do the best for her children and kind of trying to sanitize things a little bit, just in the world a little bit too. So even though she's kind of this contradicting figure, she still cares in some regard. And then, but also there's the kind of viewpoint of like, oh, well, if she was the bird, then she probably would just put her out of her misery too. So, was that like us kind of including bits of her in the story, because she's not like present because of the coma stuff, like, was that kind of difficult compared to the other characters as far as trying to find a balance between humanizing her but also showing that she's kind of this egotistical bitch who wants things her way? And I was curious about that. So
Yeah, it was a struggle. It was complicated to just find the right balance for people to just not only hate her, because if you have a character that's too monolithic, it usually doesn't make for a very good story, because you just it's too easy to identify that they are just the bad person, and you just root against them. And it's way more interesting to keep players or readers in a gray zone where they absolutely want to hate that person because she's an egotistical asshole, but they can't, because to some extent she's also, as you said, caring, and she also wants the best for her. And I remember, Coralie, we had a lot of discussions about that, actually.
I think that what is interesting in characters is that in real life people are never bad from nowhere. I mean, of course you have a certain some people who grew up egotistical or grew up perverse or bad with other people or violence or whatever. But the interesting things I feel is to understand where it does come from and how it connects with their own humanity and in their own way of connecting to the world. And so, at least to me, when we talked about it, it was very important to understand where does it came from in the Marie, and how even if she is an egotistical bitch, she has kids, and how the love of a mother, even if she has so many flaws, how it still shows, even if she has all those many flaws. And also I think it was also, I always get back at that because that's important to me. Also because it was a woman. I felt that the experience of a woman in the world today, and why a woman would be an egotistical bitch today, and why we would be maybe I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have the word, but it's
a stereotype.
Yeah, but it's also like we are tougher with women who are egotistical bitch than with men who are egotistical. What's the man version of a bitch? Even that. Yeah, no, but even that, it's like, and because to me it's so important to like always talk about humanity inside people, especially if it's a story about relationships and family and love, and even if love is hard to find, it's there. So it was important to have this subtleness about this character too, and to work hard to find it, even if sometimes we were like, okay, like, no, she's bad. Yeah, but maybe she's bad, but maybe she is also something else that's only bad.
Yeah, that's kind of the beauty of, like, ultimately, choosing whether to take her off life support or not, is like if people can kind of find the half full or half empty, or aspect of her, especially we're in spoiler territory, so I'll just especially with the assumption that she was mostly to cause for Astrid's death is because she didn't want her. She gave her a hard time about the seatbelt and stuff like that, and she aggravated June while she was driving, and and I think highlighting the crash and then just slowly learning more information about it was an interesting way to kind of relay that information, because that's important. That's the name of the game, literally. But you're kind of going backwards and forwards trying to figure out the context of that and why it's such a game changing moment. So, and then having her backstory near the end too, I think was a nice touch to kind of put everything on the board too before you had to choose. I guess the last question before I have just general questions about distribution and stuff like that is so the ending implies that June was writing a script the whole time, and then but Astrid is still alive, so it was kind of a writer and a writer and a writer. So I was kind of curious if that was the intention all along, to kind of have her write a script because she is a script writer, or to kind of have more of a happier ending, because children dying is never fun. So I was just curious about that.
It's very funny because this was a very controversial ending. When we recorded the voice of the game, we worked with a person called Sarah Elmaleh, who was the casting director, and basically she was the one directing the talents during the recording, and she discovered the script as we recorded it, because I didn't send her the script beforehand because we actually, Corani and I, we didn't finish writing it, so I was kind of writing as we record, basically, more or less. And she discovered the ending while we were recording it, and she was outraged. She was super annoyed by this ending, and she was like, "No, you're completely breaking everything that you built so far." Saying that it was all just a story is basically breaking the relationship you have with the players and the trust, the emotional investment that they put in the story.
Yeah, kind of like it was all a dream ending.
Yeah. Yes. But the funny thing is that it wasn't my first intention. My first intention was to say that it's actually maybe 5 more years later, and it's not Astrid. It's the character is called Achille. So Achille is a boy's name, and so it could be that she just was able to start living again, and maybe she had another child, which seems completely impossible when you lose one, but maybe can happen if you're able to rebuild yourself. Or maybe she has absolutely nothing to do with the Junon of the story, but she's more in my situation, being completely terrified when she became a mother by the possibility to lose her child, so much so that she felt compelled to write a story about that because it would keep her up at night otherwise, which is autobiographical. It's the reason why I decided to work on the rec first. It's because as a parent, I was really obsessed with the possibility that this would happen to me. So there's multiple ways to interpret that ending. And one of them is, she's actually Junon, and the character is called Astrid, Achille, but maybe it's Astrid because it's the same actress who actually gives her voice to both characters. So once again, I tried to come up with something that would be voluntarily ambiguous. And some people absolutely hate it, some people love it, some people hate it, and then I say, but did you think about that? And then they love it, or the other way around. So there's just lots of different reactions, which I like. I don't know what Coralie, what you thought about the ending. Did you I think I remember.
At first, I was like, maybe this is another game, you know? Maybe it's like a lot of ideas, you know, in one story. But it was your choice, and I mean, I went on with it. And I'm not sure I took part in the process of this last bit at the end.
No, it's true. I actually decided.
So that's why.
It's true. I actually decided to be authoritarian.
But I think it's
Yeah.
I didn't play to
Because,
the
you know,
game yet, so I don't I didn't experience it.
Oh, so we spoiled it for.
Hey,
So,
I warned you
something
there
I
were
was-
there were spoilers, but okay, go ahead,
Alright.
Ty.
Something I wanted to ask
Yeah,
about,
sure.
if you guys do the French version of the game, are you going to go ahead and fix that naming situation with that one character who was based off Hiccup?
Well, if we do it in French, there won't be anything to fix because the name that we are actually using currently is the French
Okay,
name.
you know what I
we
find-
won't need to fix it. But you mean just re-record the English sentence, just that English sentence, so that
Alright.
yeah, we could definitely do that because it's something that two people mentioned already. So I don't like the idea of keeping two people out up at night.
You've
So we
ruined my
definitely have
life. You should have kept the name
That's
the same.
that's not accurate to the canon of how. Anyway,
Yeah, I was just, you know what I find funny about that is
Sorry.
that his name got changed because of a hiccup.
Oh.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, I
Absolutely.
guess going back to more of the technical aspects, because those are all my story questions. Were there other points you wanted to add about the story that we didn't touch on, that you just kind of wanted to expand upon? Okay.
No.
I
Okay,
don't.
cool. I just
I
want to
didn't
make
do.
sure you guys got, all the points. But yeah, I really like the art gallery flashback. That was my favorite.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to mention too. Especially as we struggled so much to find this ID, contrary to all the other IDs that came almost immediately. This one we struggled a lot with it. We went with the first version that was completely different and that really didn't work. And then we had this ID and suddenly everything was like, oh, we could have had this idea right from the start. It would have been more simple, but
That's
it's just
fair.
not.
I mean,
how
it's
it
also
works.
curious. It's also interesting to see that, like, we mentioned How You Train Your Dragon, but like there was a big Lebowski reference in that, and I was just like, oh, it's interesting to see like how American, media is still influencing everyone for the most part, So, and like, honest, go ahead.
And we have Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind reference, which is both an American and a French reference because it's an American movie shot by a French director. So it's kind of bridging the gap
That's
between
fair.
the two
I haven't
cultures.
seen that one, so that's probably why I didn't catch it. Okay, yeah, I've heard that. I'll
It's
put
great.
it on my list. So like I guess the technical aspects. So you guys, are writers. Are you like? Did you guys come up with the studio yourselves, or like were you hired by a third party? So that aspect, and then like the developmental process. I assume this was made in Maya or what's the other one? Blender. As far as
Blender.
the character renders and stuff. And then like just kind of the production process to pitching it. Like I assume you have to pitch it to PlayStation and all the places for it to be on those platforms. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like just how the pipeline works from your end?
Yeah. So first things first, I decided that it's simpler to, if you want to get interesting work, it's simpler to just create your own company and hire yourself and your sister because if you don't do that, it will be challenging. Actually, when I decided to make reality inspired games, at first I didn't necessarily want to create a company because we are not from an entrepreneurial family. I don't think we have any business owner in our close family. So I really did. Yeah, no, it's just not in our family culture. So I just did it because I really had to, and there are lots of things I hate about it, but that's a thing I think is really cool about it. It's just the possibility to have the creative control over not only the story or the game or how it looks like and feels like, but also who you are going to work with. So it's really great because when I felt completely stuck, like I was in a position where the story was intimate enough that I would not necessarily be confident to ask for a professional writer to help me. But I was I was completely sure that Coralie would be the perfect person to just help me out of the hole I dug myself into. And so I just felt like I'm just going to ask her because I think she's the right person, and she agreed. She said yes, so it's really cool. So yeah, that's easy. It's easier when you're just your own boss. But to do that, you have to find
I have
money.
months.
You're right, but it's not. But it's not the platforms that you pitch. If you want to have a game out on the PlayStation or Xbox or even the Nintendo Switch nowadays, you can basically do it. If your game passes what we call lot check, which is a technical verification of your game, but it's only technical. If you pass that, if you respect all the guidelines of the platforms, basically you will be on those platforms. So you can have your game out on all the platforms. But if you want to be actually able to make the game, you need a budget for it. And then the people you are going to pitch are the publishers, basically. So the people who have money and who are looking for projects. And most of them are definitely not interested in the kind of game the Rec is at all. But some, very few, are. And among them is a company called Column Knights. And they are not actually a publisher because we self-published the Rec. So the Pixelant self-published. So we did all the relationship with the platforms. We did all the marketing. We did all those things. But they funded the game. And they have a rev share on the revenue the game is generating. And the reason why actually the person who decides whether or not Column Knights are going to invest in a game accepted to invest in the Rec is because he played Bury Me My Love, our first game, and he cried a lot playing that game. I think he didn't exactly tell me, but I think it was the first time he was crying in front of a video game because he was moved by the story. So he decided to sign for the Rec on this basis alone. We didn't even have a prototype, and usually you are never able to convince any publisher without a prototype because they want to play the game to just get some of the risk out of the way. And they signed the Rec on a PDF, 10-sheet PDF file, basically, which never happens. And we were really lucky that they trusted us with that money because in the end, he was like, they invested 300,000 euros in the game. So it's a lot of money. Yeah, it's really a lot of money. And we were really super happy that they trusted us with that amount and just sheer creative freedom. They were absolutely never intrusive in the creative process. So we were really lucky to be able to work in that.
I mean, having a track record always helps. But go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, another question I was wondering about was, I was going to ask why the name Pixel Hunt, but then I realized it's clearly because you saw my independent short film Pixel Fight and were inspired by that. I'm just kidding. So yeah, why the name Pixel Hunt?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. When we were kids with Coralie, we played a lot of games, and among them were lots of adventure games. For me, at least, I had an Amiga, and then Coralie had a PlayStation, and she played slightly different games. For instance, the Oddworld series. That, yeah, it was amazing. But before that, I played all the LucasArts games, and I loved them because they were funny. And at the time, laughing in front of a video game was as rare as crying in front of a video game still is in a way. And so I had very good laughs, and I just wanted to keep like figuring out the rest of the story. But they were also very hard because you had to do all this pixel hunting, looking for items in the scenery that were sometimes like 3 pixels wide, and you had to click on the right position. And this was absolutely super bad game design, but at the time it was considered cool because it was challenging puzzles to be able to find those details, and fun and innovative and weird and wacky and so that's the idea behind the pixel hunt. It's the idea of we make games that most people will probably find boring or annoying, but if you're into those, there's a fair chance that you are going to be really into them.
You think you guys might do a pixel game sometime in the future?
We did a few of them earlier for clients mainly. But the next game is still in 3D, so no pixel art for us for the next project. But maybe in the future, I think
I'm out of questions. Ty, do you have any other questions you want to add or ask?
How is it in France?
Sorry?
How are things in France?
Yeah, we had an interesting conversation about
that. Very interesting. No, we are French. We are French. We are crossed. We riot. We burn stuff, and it might be a little bit awkward, seen from abroad. But that's actually a source of pride, and they are rare currently. And I'm really happy that when we just get the feeling that we are being fucked with, we just want to break stuff.
I find
I like that, even though I
find that interesting because like that's almost the inversion of like the usual stereotype of surrendering to everything.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I was going to ask, do you guys still use the guillotine when you're rioting?
I think we would wish we wish we would. We wish we would.
Do you guys want to end on we talked a little bit about where you can already get the game, but like if people want to follow you guys individually, do you guys have any social media, or does Pixel have any social media you guys want to plug?
There's a Twitter account which is called at the Pixelance, but I'm not sure I'm going to stick around on Twitter for much longer. So things are changing everywhere, and so I guess no, it's the best idea is to just try to keep in touch. Like if you go to thepixelant.com, you can sign up to the newsletter, and then we can just warn you when we have a new game out. And on a more personal basis, I have a Twitter account too, but it's not really interesting. So, and I've seen that Coralie, you've created one recently.
Oh yeah.
You're arriving at the best moment on Twitter.
I don't know. I don't think that my Twitter account is very interesting. No, but go follow the Pixel Hut.
Okay, so just go to the website and be on the newsletter if you want. That's definitely fair. So someone's got to take Elon Musk's money away from him. I think he just has too much of it and too much time. All right, well, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. This is an interesting, different thing, and that's why I wanted to follow up and make sure we did it, because I love learning about this kind of stuff. So But yeah, thanks for your time. And then as far as people listening, we're trying to get back on a weekly schedule for the podcast. We'll see if that happens. I've been saying that for like 2 months at this point, but yeah. I mean, not as much as the main content,
right?
but it's still as far as
work.
finding people that are interesting to interview and that aren't just like my friend circle coming back like every like, hey, we need to do a podcast eventually. Like, what do you know about? Come on down. But yeah, hopefully we'll get better because we have a new scouting thingy Bob that we're trying out to. But anyway, that's boring stuff. But yeah, and then we're back on the main content. So if people like the main content, make sure you're still subscribed because we got hacked recently, and that was fun dealing with that. But yeah, ask me about that. But it took a little bit. But YouTube creative I don't know, the people that deal with the YouTube creators were pretty fast for the most part. It just took a little while getting coding and fancy stuff back. But yeah, so thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on the podcast. And if you're new, I think that we're like in our 80th-ish, we're in the 80s episodes. So there's plenty of backlog if you're new. For some reason. And yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day, night, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Communication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting provider. We are really hoping the show makes a difference in how people view animation, as well as media as a whole, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like and want to join the animation and media industry. If you like what you heard, please remember to show support by giving a like, a follow, rating those 5 stars, as well as subscribing to our main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube, and turn your notifications on. New episodes of Animation Communication come out every Wednesday at 6 a.m. EST on podcasting platforms and 4 p.m. EST on YouTube. You can follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at the KP Podcast for information on upcoming guest episodes and more, as well as our hosts KP and Lyle Convoy at I Love KP a Lot and at Lyle Manbad on social media. I'm Lucy, and thank you for being a part of our community. See you next time on Animation Communication.